you put like the?
I edited it.
It's still asking me to log in.
For what?
You sent like the studio link, not like the public link.
No way. Oh, I did send the studio link. My bad. Yeah, I don't know why it's so.
And yo, comments are turned off.
Getting it. Good. What? Yes, I know. It's supposed to be on. It's the stage mic.
Right, I've received a subtle text cue that we're good. Fingers crossed you can hear me. I hope audio's good, sort of, kind of. All right. Yes. All right. Perfect. Sounds good. I see through a separate channel in Discord that we are ready to rock. So, hey, thank you so much. Hey, this is awesome. Really flattered and honored to come spend some time with you and hang out. I realize I've got Steam going on in the background, so if you see any video game notions, hey, I'm just part of the party here, having some fun. And thanks again and again for letting me come join you. I wanted to bring something to you, hopefully a session titled Cybersecurity Shop Talk, Hangout, and Behind the Scenes Banter. So, hey, without further ado, kind of before we dive in, again, seriously, obligatory thank you. It's just really surreal to have some opportunity to spend some time with you all who are doing the real work, who are, I don't know, building out what is going to become, you know, the whole cybersecurity landscape for the future. So that's seriously really, really cool. And thanks again. Hey, let me be super duper quick in the obligatory, who am I slide, the introduction, the credentials, the credibility. Look, hey, got my teeth cut up with cybersecurity and started to learn some of this well over I was at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. That was my undergrad, and that's where I started to learn and get a little bit sharp on all the cybersecurity CTF stuff alongside the YouTube channel. And that's really my upbringing, but for the super crash course of a career, hey, jumped out of the Coast Guard Academy to go work with the Department of Defense Cyber Training Academy. I was an instructor there, went to go do some time on the keyboard as an operator with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and now the pot where I live, where I'm spending my days now, is at Huntress as a security researcher there. Tons of fun, and hopefully we'll be able to tell some cool stories about that, because that's really what I wanted to do, is tell some stories. And it's always interesting. It's always a little bit of a balance when you tell a virtual talk, when you have a virtual session, because for one thing, I can't really see you. Like, I'm just talking to my computer. I can't really hear you. I don't know. It's hard to read the room, and there isn't a whole lot of predicates on what you're interested in and what you want to hear about and what is valuable and worthwhile to you. But I think for the sake of a capture the flag competition, we might have one in the back pocket to be able to give, because I prefer to do sort of a choose your own adventure. Like, hey, here's a grab bag assortment, here's a buffet of different stories, and hopefully something that we might be able to have some fun with. But if I sort of break the narrative here, hey, exit the slides in full screen presentation mode, we could be chatting about Baby Shark, maybe advanced persistent threat hackers and threat actors, maybe vulnerabilities that we're seeing in different virtual event platforms, not like Zoom, but hey, some other things when everyone was doing virtual conferences and virtual events. Maybe some cyber criminals, some dark web flair. That's a lot of fun, usually kind of a cool conversation, alongside our OneSoft, other vulnerabilities in like supply chain, and hey, code that we push down to other software and applications. And there's a couple of errata, whether we're getting into some malware, maybe digging into some code, hopefully having some fun technical conversations, or other vulnerabilities that lead to weird career decisions and ethical oddballs that you just don't oftentimes expect and think about. There's some fun stories in there alongside other ransomware gangs is another story. But I think, if I may, to kind of keep driving us on some sort of a straight path, though I would love to really get your take. Hey, what are you interested in? Which of these would you like to dive into? I don't know if we'll have time. I got to admit. Hey, we're about 14 minutes in already for our hour. So let's just drive onward to CTFs and capture the flag to IRL. So what I want to do with this story, as I fly way, way down on my slides here to go find the start of this, what I want to do is try to parallel what you're doing right now, like how you're playing capture the flag, and how it really is synonymous to other stuff that you do for security research, like in the real world IRL aspect, in hunting up vulnerabilities. So let me have some fun with that, and I hope that's kind of interesting, because there are similarities, there are differences, there are things that you think about, things that go away, things that don't go away, and let's dive in. So I want to talk about Veeam. And a Veeam vulnerability, a recent CVE. This is a little bit topical because this hit the streets just last month. And if folks aren't familiar, Veeam is a backup solution. So one of the software technologies that you could buy, purchase, etc., that will help manage other computers to manage their backups, to, hey, keep track of their files, keep track of everything they do for configurations. It's backups, not much more to it. But you could go take a look at their website, because recently, some time ago, start of March, you can see, hey, the published and last modified date down here, March 3rd, March 10th. There was a vulnerability. There was a CVE that they released a knowledge base for, or a security advisory. And this is basically your challenge prompt. Like, hey, you put your capture the flag hat on, and hey, the same way you might do in a CTF Jeopardy board, you click on a tile to see the challenge description, see what information it's willing to give you, any files to download, and then you start to play. So let's dance with that a little bit further. What we have is the challenge prompt, literally titled challenge in this security advisory, which I thought was fun. They say, hey, there's a vulnerability in this Veeam backup and replication component that allows an authenticated user operating within the backup infrastructure network perimeter to obtain encrypted credentials stored in the configuration database. So we got a little bit of some breadcrumbs here. Say, okay, we're the player. We are the one beating up this capture the flag challenge. And our flag here is the ability to obtain encrypted credentials, right? That's our objective. That's our goal. And with that, we sort of have the challenge laid out right in front of us. Like, we know what our target is. And then we have a little bit more details. Maybe we know the binary because the security advisory is just going to straight up tell us. It says, look, the vulnerable process, Veeam backup service.exe, listening on TCP port 9401, just like you would in like a pwn challenge for seriously a capture the flag. That's where the issue is. That is what allows an authenticated user to request encrypted credentials. So that's what we can drill down into. But we know that this is patched. And I wouldn't really want to be able to have this story and tell this to you without it being patched. So this gives us a couple interesting options because we could try to download the patched version. We could try to download the vulnerable version and do a diff, try to see the deltas, try to see what has changed in between these versions to see what's fixed. Maybe that'll clue us in and narrow the scope on finding that vulnerability. Those are some options here, but it's good to know there's more in this challenge prompt or security advisory for us to dig into. Anyway, I want to have some fun. I totally want to parallel this to, again, that CTF scene and capture the flag aspect. So I don't know if folks are familiar with the CTS or if you're on Twitter all that often, but he posted a pretty fun meme, a good joke, a couple of laughs. The forbidden CTF tactics that folks don't want you to know about. And it's this iceberg of all the things that are included in, hey, maybe us staying up way too late at night, drinking a whole lot of energy drinks, eating pizza, trying to play capture the flag and learn some hacking and cybersecurity. So we're going to bounce back and forth between that. I do want to use that as a backdrop and maybe a little bit of a bingo card as to discussing this more. So bringing this internal, bringing this to us, trying to get tactical to go now play and see what we could do with this Veeam vulnerability. We have a team member, right? Hey, someone else sees this challenge on the board. They see it out there in the wild, and they're notifying us, hey, has anyone seen this? Has anyone tracking this latest Veeam vulnerability? And the memes don't go away. You can see the Slack reactions maybe down there at the bottom. Hey, we've got the surprised Pikachu, the shocked Pikachu, and we're memeing. That doesn't go away. And maybe that's where the bingo card starts to kick off. We're driving down in the iceberg. We're playing capture the flag for fun, playing CTF to learn, all mapping this to a real vulnerability. But now we are adjusting our sleep schedule to stay up late to go see, hey, what damage is going to come from this vulnerability in the real world here. We got our energy drinks, we've got our coffee, we've got something to keep us cruising, and we set up some time to dig into this. And Sharon, Dima, others start to look into it. And there's an interesting thing here, because I don't know if I highlight or emphasize this line, but the same way that you think about, hey, have I solved a challenge like this before? Have I seen this in my past expertise and repertoire of playing different capture the flag challenges and building up my skill set? He asks, look, is this something that we could try to look into or solve or address in the same way that we've done chasing VMware Horizons, hey, other vulnerabilities and exploits way out in the past? You look past your previous write-ups or you try to see if there's anything in your own notes that can help solve this challenge. It parallels the very same. And that's exactly what I was trying to drive towards. Hey, if you can go onto ctftime.org, if you can go look through someone's Git book and Git notes to see if there are any past write-ups or solutions, do you have a canned answer here that would work? That's another mark on our bingo card. So driving forward, we start to ask, hey, how can we drill down into this? How hard would it be to see how many computers, how many hosts, partners, and people that we protect for their machines, for their computers and devices, how many are running this vulnerable process? That's maybe a new angle that doesn't come from capture the flag, because in CTF it's a game, right? It's a sport, it's to learn, it's for play, it's for fun. But there's an interesting real world aspect when, hey, any unauthenticated user can get remote code execution in a real product and real software solution that's in the world. Now, I flag this tweet. I flag, hey, another maybe notification that Code WhiteSec, another company, another research spot, has dug into this. And they come to say, hey, this vulnerability, this issue in Veeam backup is serious. Expect exploitation attempts pretty soon. It's probably going to hit the streets. We're going to see fired off in the wild. Our teammate, Marcus Wolftang, was able to develop an exploit just by using the exposed API. They include the screenshot here. You can see, hey, domain name, username, the admin, users, and the password. Whether that's in base 64, as I note there, or there are some genuine passwords. And we're thinking, wait a second, they solved the challenge. They got the flag. Someone else has done it. A team has already jumped in, got the points on the leaderboard. If again, we're drawing this analogy. So we're thinking, if this is really going to be a big deal, if the teams that are already playing this say, you know, this is easy, threat actors, hackers, real adversaries can take advantage and abuse this like that. All right, we should probably dig into this. And that's sort of some of the conversations we start to have. You know, we're thinking internally, should we start to do some outreach? Should we notify people? Should we get messaging, education, and awareness out there? If you're vulnerable, you need to patch. You need to get up in the fight and put your ear to the ground on this thing. Maybe another different angle that you don't often see in strict capture the flag, right? But we are rallying the troops. We are getting everyone together. We are getting the team up on board. Hey, you're jumping into a Discord call, you're jumping into Slack, you're jumping into Zoom, you're starting the war room, and you say, where's our best binary exploitation guy? Where's the best web player? Who's our crypto fella? All these people that you want to get together to dig into this. That doesn't go away. We still have the team aspect here. And that's super important because what you're doing right now, building that's a fast track to some great success. And this is exactly what happens. We say, hey, let me get a channel started. Let me start to have some dedicated and organized spot for us to dig into this challenge, this exploit, this vulnerability. And the memes don't go away. I'll keep driving that forward. We say, look, hey, what do we want to call this thing? What about, I don't know, Veeamy Boys, some stupid gimmick. We're trolling. The memes don't stop. But I hope that, you know, resonates well with what you might already be up to. So we create this channel. We literally make Veeamy Boys Vuln Outreach 2023. And then we get to work. We start to beat up this challenge. And if we go back to our challenge prompt, if we go back to the security advisory, they give us a download. They give us a downloadable static file, like a free trial, where we could go ahead and play with the software, play with the solution, go ahead and get hands on the product to experiment and go see this thing and determine where's it vulnerable and what more could we dig into. So we click on this free trial button, we get this thing downloaded, and maybe we zoom back in on those patched versions to note where the differences in Delta might be. Something we can still keep in our back pocket, but that's how we really start to get into the action here. And as expected, hey, some individuals kind of jump into the leadership positions, the manager positions, the folks that are making sure that everyone is doing what they should be doing, expressing and stretching their own skill sets and what they're great at. Hey, someone's on board for messaging. Hey, someone's going to work with PR and media. Hey, someone's going to try to recreate this proof of concept. We're going to be seeing what else we can do within our own code base to make this better, faster. And I hope you've got something like that just as well. Maybe a team lead or a team captain, president of the club, anything that parallels to, hey, this person that can be, I don't know, taking charge to make sure stuff gets done. Doesn't go away. We do outreach. We do, of course, hey, try to see if we can get a hold of the folks that are vulnerable, that do need to patch for this and need to be tracking it. This is kind of that blurb that we just spit together in Google Docs. Maybe another aspect, not extremely pertinent to capture the flag, but one of those deltas as you get to the real world. And now, the other team, the other, hey, Code White GmbH, the person that solved this challenge, so to speak, the person that did successfully recreate the proof of concept and knows how to exploit this vulnerability, they start to drop some hints. They start to talk about it a little bit. They start to, message what they were up to, the same way you might see some chatter about a specific challenge within the Discord server or anything like that. They say, look, passwords are stored with this encryption scheme, this function, this method. They do get decrypted, though, through this transit process. So interestingly enough, while the kind of challenge description, the security advisory, this update said they're encrypted, you can retrieve these credentials and these passwords decrypted in pure plain text. So for the vulnerability's sake, for real world impact, kind of a big deal, especially because it's a backup manager. So that means that you have the credentials, the username and password pairings for all of the computers that are being backed up by this Veeam solution. So for real hackers, for cybercrime, that's a pretty juicy target because it means like lateral movement everywhere and another potential for high value targets. And hey, one of those backed up machines could be my way to domain admin, could give me full compromise access across the entire network system enterprise. But let me parallel this back to our capture the flag sense, because this is when, you maybe try to pull on that social engineering thread. You're thinking, hey, if someone else has solved it, can I get some intel? Would you mind letting me know? Hey, what did you do? How did you try this? So yeah, you're begging for hints, talking with other teams, trying to see what details might be able to be helping you and your team learn something about this. And I have no shame. Like, that's exactly what I'll do. One of the other team members, coworkers over there, Frykos, who we have worked with in the past for our OneSoft or other vulnerabilities we've been chasing, I wanted to reach out. I want to say, hey, are you close with Marcus on the Veeam exploitation? Can we be a foot in the door here? Turns out we have like 11,000 vulnerable hosts, or excuse me, 1,100 in our partner base. It's kind of a big deal for us. We're trying to chase this. We're trying to get in front of it. If you wouldn't mind, look, we'd love to banter. We'd love to share some threat intel and learn more about this. And like, oh, hang on. We have like 2,400. The number's going up. Scratch that. We're seeing more of the attack surface expanding as we kind of do more due diligence here. But that doesn't go away. I message Marcus. I straight up message the individual that solved the challenge that recreated this exploit. And I say, hey, I'm super sorry. I don't mean to be, banging on your door here. I don't want to overstep, but we're tracking this thing just as well. Is there anything that you'd be willing to share about your proof of concepts? Can you give me any other details if you're up for it? Now, normally I know this is like, hey, pretty out of scope for a capture the flag. That's oftentimes genuinely against the rules. But in the real world, hey, fighting the same fight, trying to make security better, trying to make sure, hey, we get the threat intel out there the best that we can and do the proper messaging and security. I think this is A-okay. We're all in the same fight. Now, on that note, Marcus responds. It takes a little bit, but he does come back to me. He says, hey, John, look, thanks so much for reaching out. The exploit is honestly really straightforward. You have to write a WCF client, properly configure it, and call the invoke methods of these exposed interface with the appropriate arguments. There are probably a lot of ways to solve this challenge. There are probably hundreds of methods to reach that way. Most require a token or a valid session key, and that's what you would expect, right? That's what you'd hope, and that there's some authentication aspect to it, so you don't have a glaring hole to go steal and leak credentials. But there are some functions that don't require this authentication. And there's the flaw. There is the unauthenticated access to leak credentials. And I say, hey, thanks so much. Tracking. We were digging through these possible functions. We were trying to make some sense of it. We hadn't found one just yet that didn't require a token or session key. We'll keep poking. And I'll admit, this is when I try to jump in the fight. Like, hey, I want to spin this thing up. I want to be able to play with it just as well. We thought it's WCF. I don't know if folks are familiar with that. It's one of the Windows communication frameworks. It's a lot like a SOAP API, if folks have seen that before. There's another individual on the team. Hey, Caleb, he was cutting up with me. He says, I was starting to write a WCF client just as well. all the interface implementations are in the binary. You don't need to try and find the SOAP API or like the WSDL method implementation, but it's gross. It sucks to work through. There's too much there. The names of the methods, though, are pretty straightforward. If we can find them, we could use them. But first, we need to be able to actually get a client working that can properly communicate with the service, with that port 900401 on this backup binary. So it's like we're writing our pwn tool script, right? Drawing that parallel again to capture the flag. Hey, you've got your scrappy Python socket library to connect to this thing to be able to play with it. Maybe you're cutting up pwn tools, binary exploitation. But this is where we start to hit the wall. These are some of the screenshots that I took. Hey, we got access to the Veeam backup and replication software. We thought, let's pull it down. Let's play with it. Let's see what this thing is. And I thought, let's use this test client, this WCF test client that is something that can come with Visual Studio for other development works. And I'm trying to click around. I'm trying to see, hey, what can we do here? How do we access this thing? And I thought it would just be as simple as telling the WCF client, like, look, just connect to this address. It uses some net TCP binding. Net.tcb is the schema. Going to localhost, trying to hit up that port 900401. Hit OK, try to connect to this thing, but it errors. It just wouldn't do it. It died, it failed, it choked right away. Look, it can't pull the metadata. It doesn't know what methods and functions it's able to call. It's not getting any further. And I'm hitting the wall. I'm like, dang it, what the heck? We can do a little bit more digging. We can keep hunting this thing down, but this kind of sucks. We thought we had an easy win and no dice. So this is when the long, dark night of the soul continues, where you start banging your head against the wall, trying to research, trying to learn, asking Uncle Google, I don't know, bringing up Chat GPT, seeing whatever you can figure out to gain some access here. We get other team members jumping in the fight. Hey, I see this method name while I'm trying to decompile and work through this thing. It's C#, so we could kind of mess with a little bit more of the binary. Find creds by ID is maybe a method we could access. Find creds by ID without the password. Caleb says, yeah, man, I saw that last night, but I went to bed like however many hours ago. And this is like midday. The dude's already staying up crazy late. But WCF is a nightmare. He hadn't gotten anything working. And I hadn't either. Like, man, we're struggling. But then we start to get some semblance together. We're using .peek or oftentimes like IL-spy or DN-spy or other tools to be able to take a look at some of the IL bytecode that executable is written and made up of. It is, again, C#, so we can kind of play with those. And the same way you might be using those tools in capture the flag challenges, tools don't go away. You're going to be doing the same thing here. And I hope that's kind of cool and kind of fun to see. Like, look, you've got now a giant binary to play with rather than some cute cookie cutter maybe gets function and a small little C file. Well, hey, you've got other applications and real world products that people are using, and there's real attack surface there. Anyway, Caleb has a breakthrough. All credit, kudos to him. Look, other team members are doing incredible work. I just try to be a champion. I just try to like cheer him on from the sidelines. He says, I can call the service now. I don't know the protocol yet, but it does take XML, sort of the configuration stuff as arguments. I receive an error that at least is coming from the API. It's at least coming from the binary in the problem. So I know that I am accessing it some way, somehow. This works. I've got something. Here's the code. Here's how we can cut it up and play with it. I'm at least interacting with it right now. Now we need to start to flesh and fill this out. He's digging into the interfaces that you end up working with, all the other endpoints that might be accessible with the API, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And with that, we start to explore a little bit more. I don't know if I jumped a slide there. Okay, cool. This is where, look, you're drowning in code, you're exploring, you're seeing whatever you can do, you're cutting up all the services and functions that you can make some sense of, trying to figure out what config files and XML you need to pass in, arguments, you're fuzzing really, brute force, trying to figure it out. but we have some data coming back at least. We got, after some time, after the clock's been ticking, we got this big dump of base 64 spat back out on the terminal. Okay. A little bit promising. And there it is. That's what it was. If we just decode that big giant base 64 blob after we've done all the hard legwork of trying to make sure we can interact and discuss, chat with this API, we got it. We could pull down different passwords. We could pull down different accounts, the username, the password, test user, super secret password, and then, you know, the celebration, the emojis, boom, fire, ta-da, party, clap. Nice. You solved the challenge. We could collect that flag, get some points on the leaderboard. But a little bit of a different aspect here, because now we got to do a little bit more work for the IRL space. Caleb says, look, if you're around and interesting, hey, let's do a little breakdown, and then we dive in and chat about it. You get to learn the ropes. I get to see, hey, what did he put together? What did he get working that I wasn't able to succeed with? And we're, you know, the same way you might be in a Discord call for 8 hours, for 12 hours, for the 24 hours, for, I don't know, a whole CTF day. Or maybe I'm in there with Caleb for 4.5 hours. That's pretty cheesy. Maybe that's baby stuff. Pretty toddler. But he offers the sort of internal write-up, like, hey, how we made sense of it, how we might be able to actually cut through the code and pull out these credentials that Veeam stores. I'm not going to drag you through this giant text blob on the other side of the screen here, but I do want you to know that you do the same thing. Like, you're asking, you're telling your friends, you're telling your peers and colleagues, hey, how did you solve that? Hey, how did you figure it out? You're learning from each other, and that doesn't go away. So now we have new issues, because sure, we've solved the challenge, we got the flag, so to speak, but we still need to determine how this affects the world. How many of these vulnerable instances, how many of these products are out there on the street that could be impacted, that could be affected, that could be exploited? So we know it's listening on port 9401. And it is normally an internal service, right? You probably shouldn't have your Veeam server or your backup solution exposed to the public internet, but some people do. Like, that's just an unfortunate reality. That's just a fact. Hey, your domain controller is totally out open to the internet. I don't know, anonymous FTP, open RDP, stupid telnet. Any of that stuff could still be out there. So we want to do that spot checking. So we go look on Shodan. If folks aren't familiar, hey, Shodan, the search engine for the Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, you know, are there any open ports for vulnerable machines out and about? But port 9401 is probably an odd port number. You don't see that all the time. So if we were to take a look at, hey, what would Shodan scan when you might be, I don't know, trying to find those open RDP servers or weird public directories and HTTP services, et cetera, et cetera. Shodan can give you all that information, but it can't tell you about this Veeam backup and replication service because Shodan doesn't scan port 9401. Okay, so crap. We're SOL. We can't really do a whole lot of that digging and due diligence. But maybe we could try to make some things that could get us some better access. I think, look, let's fall back. Let's retreat. The best thing we might be able to do is just alert the partner. Strongly encourage them to patch, which we've already done. But we can't do a whole lot to go find the greater attack surface. And since this is working with the API, there aren't really any artifacts or like indicators of compromise on the host. Like we don't have a good way to detect exploitation of this vulnerability. We can't find and see this happen for indicators of compromise, indicators of attack. But then I get this weird idea. And this is an oddball one. Hey, how squeamish are we, or how uncomfortable are we on trying to use like a safe check functionality on the external IP addresses that we know for our partners and folks that we support can we use that to see, just like call them up, see if they answer the phone, see if it's a real Veeam server there. Don't do anything, don't exploit it, don't leak credentials, but just hang up and validate that Veeam server is active, open, and listening and public to the world. It's on the open internet. Can we modify our own proof of concept to like safely check? Is there going to be some damage there? And we're thinking about this because that feels a little bit weird. It feels a little bit now, we are doing some active scanning. We aren't trusting, relying on Shodan, but we go out and we try to leave some fingerprints on these external computers themselves. I try to sell this thing. I try to say, hey, can we dig into this? And Andrew's other team members say, like, look, we've done worse. So we're thinking, let's try it. I get this blessing. I get, hey, the head honchos, the team captain, the leadership that says, I think we can do it. Let's do it. And then we send it. And we fire it off. We modify our exploit. We say, look, these few hosts have a vulnerable, unpatched, and unsafe version of Veeam publicly exposed to the internet. We find like 2 of them, like seriously, like single digits across the, I don't know, 2,400 that we had. And that's not a big number by any means, and that's whatever. Maybe it's not to say that wasn't worthwhile, but I do like to think, you know, those 2 people, those 2 organizations that we could help, we could notify them like, you seriously need to go patch right now. That hopefully helps them sleep better at night. That saves them from a horrible nightmare situation where their whole enterprise is compromised because they were able to, threat actors and hackers, leak credentials everywhere. That's bad. So I hope we could help at least those small handfuls of folks. Any number is still a delta and still an impact. Any one organization or business is something that we want to help. And then we think, all right, it's time for us to share our write-up. It's time to pry open the GitHub repository, you know, pop this thing to CTF time if we're drawing that capture the flag analogy. And see if we can get the story out there. So I try to write this up. And then Caleb comes back and he says, look, you know, we got full remote code execution on Veeam. Turns out it had a SQL service accessible to it, its own database. And with the API, there were a whole lot of weird, shady functions you could do. There's tons and tons of methods and functionality there. So we could just do remote code execution. If some of you have beaten up some Microsoft SQL servers or other databases in the past, you might know you can turn on XP-CMD shell or some like native functionality to go ahead and actually like run commands, like genuinely execute system commands, pop calc, run dir, ls, whatever. And with the stupid proof of concept, hey, you know, we could run raw SQL commands. And then we just could toggle and turn on XP-CMD shell. And now we have code execution. Now we've pushed the envelope even further. Like, it's not just leaking credentials, but now we have initial access from an unauthenticated user. And that, I think, will end up running a system. I don't remember which user privileges that runs as, but you already now have then immediate access on the target and victim. So big deal vulnerability, big potential impact, and we wanted to tell the story. So I wrote up, hey, the blog post on this. I wrote up the our write-up, you know, taking input from the team members, trying to get all the screenshots, trying to tell the story and get the pictures the best way that we could. And I think that was worthwhile because when you play capture the flag, right? When you're doing what you're doing, sometimes it's very easy to just scoff at the write-ups. It's like, nah, whatever. I solved the challenge. Who cares? I don't need to take those notes and keep track of it. But it is so invaluable for you to do that because then you have this captured picture of everything that you've done, of all the work that you did, and you know that solution for future events, for future challenges that you try to dig into. And it helps other people because someone else might be able to go see that write-up and learn something new. You have all that and more when you build out something for a real-world vulnerability and something that you're chasing for security research efforts, for analysis. because this helps people patch. This helps people know what the threat is, to do their own detection engineering, for validating, for testing, to understand it more, to get indicators of compromise or indicators of access if they make sense. Anything could really, really help out. So you have to do that write-up. You have to get that messaging out there. And this is, I think, maybe a testament to that. Hey, we got some quick notification, just a heads up from a support partner. They sent a message in, a request, something. And maybe this is where you can see some of that validation, because even if it's the single one digit, or I don't know, number one or number two people that had their Veeam server exposed in the public internet, we can then go tell them, hey, call them on the phone at midnight to say, look, guys, this is serious. We need to do something. But they say, hey, thank you so much. This was fantastic. This was great notifications. We found a couple old Veeam servers that were just sitting somewhere out on the network map, but they were like stuffed in the corner. And no one knew. No one remembered that they were there. So this, I don't know, jump into arms, jump into action, it's really worthwhile and necessary. I don't think you get that in Capture the Flag. Maybe you get the really cool, hey, fist bumps and great hoop and hollering from the team, but you have even greater impact to, I don't know, see the whole community, see the whole cybersecurity landscape improve because of what you've done. And that's really cool and really fulfilling. And I hope that's some inspiration or motivation to keep doing it, to keep playing Capture the Flag, to keep practicing, because that's exactly what you're doing. And it's the best way to do it, without a doubt. So, hey, I try to avoid, hey, stupid bullet screenshots, or excuse me, text slides where it's just, I don't know, things that you list. But I do think maybe for the last wrap up, it's super important to do, and we can have some time for questions if folks are up for it. But if we could just straight up draw the parallels, if we could say, you know, what's this mirrored projection look back and forth between a Capture the Flag and between IRL, in quotes, right? So to speak, in real life vulnerabilities that you're chasing. You got a lot of the same stuff. You got the same teamwork. You got the same problem solving. You're using the same tools that you use. You're writing the same write-ups. You're keeping track of the same documented notes and the same hint begging. Hey, you're still trying to chat with other teams, learn what they learned. Same sleep deprivation, same energy drinks. You know, that doesn't stop. But the differences are so cool. Because, hey, you got better prizes. And I don't know if you mean like, oh, hey, we got some sweet t-shirts, or we got $1,000 in cash, like a financial prize. I get that. That's cool. Maybe you could do the same thing with some bug bounty. But I think the fulfillment and the meaning that comes from making a difference or trying to help and protect people for the work that you do is really, really cool. That's a better impact and better security as a whole. So I hope that's worthwhile. I hope that's something good for you. Hey, with that, I'm out of slides here. And I hope that's a little bit of a fun story, realizing, hey, we've got 10 minutes left together. And look, that was one rabbit hole to drive down across however many others, and some fun stories to talk about cybercrime, hacking, vulnerabilities, et cetera, et cetera. But thank you so much for letting me spend some time with you all. And if we have some time for it, can we dive into questions? I don't know if anyone else is on the line. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm gonna ask some questions that we have a couple in the chat, and then we have some set aside as well. So I know you were chatting earlier with them. Monk asked that there's so many. This is kind of a two-parter too. There's so many different CTFs, more than two, or at least two a weekend. Which CTF format do you think is best? And also focusing on like Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, or other CTFs every weekend. Are those better, or should you like one or the other, or should you do both? What's your opinion on that?
Ooh. Okay, so super good question. And I feel like I'm going to give you a boring and bad answer, but I think it's the correct answer. And that you should do what you have fun with and what you're most interested in. Because when you play a Capture the Flag competition, like a classic Jeopardy style, like you can run in any direction that you want. You can go cryptography, you can do web forensics, you can do binary exploitation or forensics, whatever. And you might have your specialty and just what you really like, what you think is fun, miscellaneous categories, etc. When you play a Hack the Box or a Try Hack Me or some of those other war games, they lean more towards boot to root, penetration testing stuff, right? Because hey, you're finding set UID binaries, you know, we're digging into how you could privilege escalate, move up to the be admin user after you've landed on the box with a reverse shell. I don't think you always do that in a capture the flag, but they do blend and mix depending on the game that's portrayed. But if you're thinking, you know, I really, really love some of the cryptography and some of the reverse engineering aspect to this. Like, I want to be cutting up assembly code. I want to be digging through a crack me and trying to understand what's the secret pin and the serial key that I need to figure out. Not often going to do that on Hack the Box or Try Hack Me. You might have better luck with micro corruption as a war game, or I don't know, crypto pals, or anything else that you might be interested in chasing. So, a really bad and boring answer, and I'm sorry. But no, do what you're interested in and do what you feel like is helping you the most. So.
Another good question says, what would you recommend doing to get a first position in cybersecurity as an intern or just as entry level?
Ooh, okay. A lot of different ways to sort of tackle this question, because you can get super technical in the weeds and be like, hey, you know, yeah, beat up this war game, go chase this certification, go study this thing, whatever. I'm going to operate under the assumption that you're already doing that. Like, hey, you're playing capture the flags with the team here, you're practicing and sharpening your skills whenever you can. So the greater way to show that is to document that, like literally show your work in a weird way. Maybe if it's just a GitHub repository, maybe if it's a website, maybe if it's a portfolio. I'm obviously a little bit biased because of a YouTube channel, right? But there's nothing wrong with that, because when you start to have the conversations, when you're looking for an internship or when you're looking for, I don't know, your first position in an entry-level gig, when you go to the interviews or you start to have conversations with people and you can straight up point them to, this is all my work, this is everything that I've been practicing, playing with, and trying to cut up, they have this proven like library and archive and catalog that just absolutely demonstrates, for one thing, your work ethic, for one thing, your ambition, your determination, and your competency. Like, what are you doing and how are you doing it? And if you're crushing it, hey, you have so much here to show, then you're a shoo-in. I think that's one incredible way to show passion. And another, if I may, just to kind of bounce with that, I realize it's kind of a fluffy answer, but it's super important. When you're playing capture the flags like this, or when you're attending a B-Sides event or a local security conference, or you're just hanging out with, I don't know, public events, try to network. Try to be in the Discord server, whether or not you're a moderator, whether or not you're a volunteer, but just be present in conversations. And that will really, really introduce you to new people. And if they can see everything that you're up to, they might just offer an opportunity because something came up. Because, hey, off the cuff, something is made available. And you would be a perfect spot for that. We want to kind of reach out and give you something too. I know that's a fluffy answer, but I do think the soft skills along with the hard skills are super important. Document, show your work, and make a whole lot of friends.
I have another good question. Obviously, with all this new AI and all that stuff, as a professional for yourself, in your eyes, how do you view an AI bot like ChatGPT? Like, what are the positives, the negatives, the dangerous sides of it? Like, kind of just your thoughts on that.
Ooh, okay. Super good question. A whole lot to run with. I think that ChatGPT is super duper cool. I'm excited about the whole AI thing. I don't know if I've bought into the, oh my God, robots are going to take over the world, cyber apocalypse sort of thing. I don't know if I have fallen for that yet. I don't think I've drank the Kool-Aid, but I can totally see the total use and advantage of just saying like, hey, ChatGPT, could you please write me some code in Golang that will go ahead and list all the open ports on an open computer and service? Hey, would you mind actually showcasing the syntax that I might be able to use to put together a Chrome extension to do something for some specific thing? It is awesome for helping me write code, but it's also flawed and makes mistakes and is sometimes really bad and the code doesn't run. But I think if you have enough knowledge and understanding that you can say, hang on, this errored, that type isn't what it should be, you can help correct it and hold its hand. All these things, when you get into the dangerous end of that conversation, two parts. I don't know if some folks have seen some recent headlines and news articles of like Samsung and other organizations just giving too much to ChatGPT, like saying, hey, can you review this information? And it's like company secrets or confidential client information. That's a no-go. That's real bad. We've had some messaging and awareness to be like, do not talk to ChatGPT about work stuff. But if I ask it out of innocence, hey, can you show me the syntax for this technical thing? I think that's okay. Now, the other end of that, when you ask about the dangers, what about cybercrime? What about the hackers? What about the threat actors? What about the adversaries? For all the points that I just mentioned, I think, yes, it can enable a lot of those maybe bottom of the barrel. Script kiddie is the dumb word, but I realize isn't the most accurate. The unsophisticated folks that just want to pull a solution off the shelf. If you say, ChatGPT, can you please write me some ransomware? It could do that if you massage and maybe manipulate the prompt. But if it has any of those hiccups and issues, they'll need to kind of figure that out. They can't rely on the AI for that. For the hardcore, real advanced persistent threats that are supposed to be super duper elite and super duper sexy with all their tradecraft and stealth, I don't think it's going to help them out because they want something new and novel and something that a programmed AI just doesn't know because it can't do that new innovation. It can't kind of have its own original thought and try something creative. It's just leaning off the whole archive of everything else that we've learned. So it's totally a balancing act. And I don't know if I even remotely answered your question, but I use ChatGPT. I can see the value in it, but I haven't drank the Kool-Aid yet.
Awesome. Yeah, and then another question that just came up too. It says, how do you keep yourself up to date on all the latest cybersecurity news and tools with all the other stuff that you balance?
Oh, super good question. Thank you. I do use Bleeping Computer as one of those news outlets and headline spots for a whole lot of tech and cybersecurity. I am on Twitter. I try to follow a whole lot of people that get into threat intel and malware and cybercrime threats. And basically turn Twitter or Mastodon, wherever you find your home, into a curated feed of just threat intel, hacker, cool stuff. There's a free trial for a thing called Truno that I've just recently found out. TRUKNO. And that just gives you like a dump of current in the wild articles or vulnerabilities or things that other vendors are chasing. So I just try to stay with it. I try to be in the communities and I try to catch and keep up with the news to really keep on top of the pulse of all this. But it's totally hard to do. It really is a balancing act. And sometimes when you've got your head down chasing something, you come up for air and then there's so much already happening around you. But it's a matter of keeping it in the corner of your eyes and staying with it in the peripherals. So.
Awesome. And then one last question too, more of, I guess, of a kind of an opinion based, but obviously there's a lot of people with different educationals, different, degree paths, everything like that. But if you had to give a generalized good cybersecurity tip to anyone trying to enhance their skills or to just, I guess, a cybersecurity tip in general, just for, life, jobs, anything like that, what would that be?
Oh, super boring answer again, but I think it's the right answer. So forgive me. Just do what's fun. Like do what you enjoy doing, because otherwise it feels like work. And there's gonna be a point, and I don't know. I don't know if I've delayed it way out into the future the best that I can, but there's gonna be a time when you wake up in the morning, you're like, man, I have to do this chore again, and it feels like something you aren't excited about. So you have to, the best that you can to keep that at bay, do something that you're really genuinely enjoying and you have a passion for and you love, because that's what keeps you interested. That's what keeps you curious. That's what keeps you wanting to do more and learn more. Make sure that you're having fun with it. And the only way to find that meaning and find that fulfillment, I don't want to tell you, hey, go chase the latest cool, hot, trendy new thing. I'll just make sure you're having fun wherever you're at, whether it's, I don't know, undergrad, whether it's business, industry, etc. Have fun. Play.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, everyone, the quick, warm virtual round of applause for John for joining us today. And I am going to just share the quick live stream for John's flag after this this talk. Again, thank you everyone for attending. Again, we really appreciate John coming on. And in a few moments, we will be passing along the torch to NJ Kick and a couple of their speakers. So for a brief moment, again, we'll keep this this flag up for a minute or two. And like I said, thank you very much for John and for coming on. And in a moment, we will be passing over the torch to the next speaker. So thank you for your time. And like I said, hold on for a moment until we get the new group settled into for the live.